Senator Miville-Dechêne. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to support Bill S-238, moved by Senator Galvez, an act on climate-aligned finance. This text invites us to reflect on the ways that our financial system, a driver of our economy, can become a real lever to achieve our climate goals instead of remaining a brake to our transition. I think that in spite of the trade war with the United States, we cannot reduce our greenhouse gas emissions commitments. It's for the future of our planet and our children. This requires action and clarity. First of all, the science is very clear when it comes to the source of climate change. It's not a matter of debate anymore. It's a reality measured and felt by everyone. Climate change is caused, with no doubt, by greenhouse gases and are the result of human activity. These emissions come mainly from fossil fuels, which still support most of our energy systems, transportation, industries, agriculture even. In spite of repeated warnings from scientists and Canada's international commitments made since the Paris Accord, global emissions from the energy sector continue to rise. In Canada, emissions from oil and gas account for about 28% of our national total. It's the main reason why, despite all our efforts, the country has never met a single one of its climate targets. Second, our financial institutions have overinvested in fossil fuels. Unfortunately, Canada's financial sector remains one of the most exposed to fossil fuels in the developed world. The country's 5 largest banks gradually increased their exposure to fossil fuel funding from an average of 15.5% in 2020 to 18.4% in 2022. That's on average, 3 times higher than American banks. It means that our money, our savings, our pension funds, our bank deposits continue to support projects that exacerbate the climate crisis. Another striking example, our largest pension fund, the Canada Pension Plan, abandoned its net zero target and continues to invest more than others in the energy sector. This contrasts sharply with Norway, whose sovereign wealth fund worth $2 trillion is strengthening its climate commitment to the companies in its portfolio. Third, climate change is already having significant impacts on our financial institutions. According to the latest estimates, we see that there's disruptions to homes and infrastructure. It means economic disruption, lost jobs, and growing instability in financial markets. The World Economic Forum's 2025 Global Risks Report highlights that environmental risks are becoming more intense and more frequent. It emphasizes that environmental risks, storms, droughts, wildfires, rising sea levels are among the most serious and likely threats to the global economy over the next decade. Fourth, other jurisdictions have begun to enact legislation and regulations to make their financial systems more resilient to climate change, while diverting investment away from fossil fuel projects that cause climate change and direct them towards clean energy that will power our future. In the United States, the Securities and Exchange Commission introduced new climate risk disclosure requirements for publicly traded companies. Canada, however, is moving more slowly. We've established the Sustainable Finance Council and adopted certain disclosure guidelines, but they remain voluntary. Without legal obligations, progress remains fragmented.
This brings me to Senator Galvez's Bill S-238. This bill proposes an innovative solution to a complex problem, ensuring that finance serves the country's climate goals. The law, therefore, would require financial institutions, both public and private, to describe how they align their loans and investments with our climate commitments, including carbon neutrality by 2050. It would also require Crown corporations such as Export Development Canada and the Canada Infrastructure Bank to incorporate climate expertise at the highest level of decision-making. This would ensure that investment decisions take into account not only financial returns, but also climate risk and the environmental impact. Finally, the bill would seek to promote financial transactions that accelerate the transition. It is a bold piece of legislation, to be sure, but a necessary one. It challenges the idea that the financial sector is an untouchable domain, separate from climate imperatives and social responsibilities. This bill, which was first introduced during the last parliamentary session, is not without its critics. Several people, myself included, felt that the bill was too prescriptive. There was criticism of the requirements for capital adequacy guidelines, which could encroach on the prerogatives of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions. These concerns were legitimate. I would like to point out that the current version of the bill incorporates several amendments that address those criticisms by offering greater regulatory flexibility. Regardless of the criticisms, this bill deserves to be studied without undue delay. In the last session, the bill was referred to the Standing Senate Committee on Banking in June 2023, more than a year, I repeat, a year after the start of second reading. 5 months later, in November 2023, consideration of the bill began, but it was ultimately shelved in committee. Having participated in these scattered sessions, I believe we could have done better. Is it not our duty as legislators to legislate for the good of the planet and future generations of Canadians? Without a clear legislative framework, our financial institutions will not spontaneously make the necessary shift. The argument that markets will self-regulate simply no longer holds water. Honourable colleagues, in 15 or 20 years, most of us will no longer be sitting here. But the decisions we make today will shape the world in which our children and grandchildren will live. By supporting the committee review of the revised Bill S-238, we are making a choice for consistency and responsibility. We are saying that Canada must live up to its commitments, that our financial institutions must reflect our values, and that the country's economic prosperity can no longer be built at the expense of the climate. So, once the second reading debate is complete, I invite you to refer the bill to committee without further delay for thorough study.